Good evening. I am Martijn Andrea, and today I chair the Planning Committee, which consists of 9 elected borough councillors, supported by a range of professional officers. It is the committee's responsibility to determine a planning application using current national and local planning policies and other relevant planning considerations. We have two cases today. Firstly, the planning officer will present the application, and then only those speakers who have registered to speak will be invited to address the committee with a strict time limit of 3 minutes. Once the presentations have been made, the committee will discuss and debate the application, seeking clarifications from the council's professional planning officers where necessary. And just to be clear, there are no part 2 items in this meeting. We can only focus on the proposals before us and only take into account what are considered material planning considerations. We welcome members from the public to attend these meetings. I would like to point out that members of the public, either supporters or objectors to the application, are not permitted to address the committee outside of the allocated public speaking section for each item, or to ask questions, interject, or clap during the meeting. Planning proposals can often generate strong opinions both for and against the development. But the committee business needs to be conducted in a professional and orderly manner without interruption from the public gallery. As a chair, if there are disturbances from the public gallery, in accordance with point 5.25 of the Council Constitution, I have the discretion to, if needed, to take a number of steps, which include removal individuals from the meeting and clear parts of the gallery. Thank you. Item, any apologies? No. Yeah, Stuart unfortunately can't make that one today. Then we have the minutes of the previous meeting. Does everybody support the minutes of the previous meeting? Let's see. Raise of hands, yeah. So we have acceptance. Any objections or abstain?
I wasn't here.
Okay, sorry, abstain. Okay, so we have 2 abstains and the rest up there. Any declaration of interest? Okay. Moses, you can go first.
Okay, on item 1, I sat on the application at Early Town Council where I'm on the planning committee. So I already have a determination, so I'll be excusing myself from the application.
Thank you. Caroline.
Thank you. Prior to joining this committee's planning committee, I sat on Early Town Council Plan Committee when determining the consultation on response on agenda item 32. On this particular occasion, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to take part in this item tonight, and I shall be withdrawing from the committee and leaving the room for its duration. Thank you.
Thank you. Because we have these 3 absences, I was proposing maybe to swap the items on the agenda and start with the application Ascot House and then followed by the application of 75 Chiltern Crescent. I was wondering if any of the committee members are okay with that one. And I just want to double check with the speakers. I know one speaker is not enthusiastic, but if that is causing any big troubles, we don't want to lose speakers. But, okay. Apologies for that one then, Steve. Okay, so then we start with item 33, which is application number 242066, which is Ascot House. and I hand over to Ben. Oh, just to confirm, there are no applications to be deferred. We don't have any applications deferred and withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. This is application 242066 to Ascot House. This proposal involves the creation of 10 residential dwellings through raising and modifying the roofscape of Ascot House, which is the existing building. And this is, of course, with associated car parking, cycle parking, refuse stores, landscaping, and associated works. So the site itself is solely located within the major development location of Wokingham. Thus, the proposal and the site is in accordance with the council's spatial strategy, both current and in future, with reference to the LPU. The site is characterized by quite a unique location, blending the lines of the town centre and the suburban outer edge of Wokingham. Now, you'll see from this very useful aerial imagery here, you can see the presence of very tall buildings along the spinal point, which is Finchampstead Road, and the site itself, which falls on a nodal point, and thus must relate visually to the larger buildings. However, the internal part of the site grades down into suburban form. Speaking of context, you can see the site centrally. If we look up to the top of the left of your screen, the site is the flat roof element in between the two trees here. And we can see it's quite a stark contrast between the 4 to 5 story Premier Inn to the far left of your screen. Moving down, you can see the site's relationship with Norton Road. Now, the dwellings along Norton Road, they are subject to a significant level increase, and the site itself is almost 2 meters lower in levels than Norton Road. Now, as you can see from the visual imagery right there, the dwellings there are terrace dwellings approved in 1999. They, even should the item go forward tonight, they will still remain larger where they face directly opposite to the application site. Moving further to the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the site's relationship with Kendrick Close. Now, what's quite interesting about this site, they're actually mutually approved at the same time under the same application in 1986, and therefore their relationship in terms of built form were considerable officers then, and all that has changed is changing circumstances in the town centre, which has informed the proposal today. The site itself was subject to a prior approval, which converted the office space, as I previously said, approved in 1986, to form 3 apartments in the basement and 21 over ground and first floor. Facade amendments were secured by a planning permission, which gives us the development we have today with front, rear, side elevations shown on the screen now. Moving to the proposal itself. So the crux of this proposal is the overall footprint is remaining identical. The bulk and mass of the proposal, again, led to by footprint, is exactly the same, it's identical. This proposal involves a minor infill extension and raising of the roof 2.5 and 1.5 stories respectively. With respect to parking provision, 38 spaces are proposed, which creates a 1.1 ratio per dwelling. Now, considering we are, of course, in the Wokingham Town Centre, reasonably acceptable parking standards is recently approved by the committee, have sat at 0.8 spaces per unit, and the proposal is in excess of this. There are no objections on highway grounds, given the site is located in an extremely sustainable location. Within a reasonable walking distance, we have 13 schools, we have 11 bus stops, we have the train station, and numerous opportunities for employment. Each of the proposed units, they comply and exceed the nationally described space standards for dwellings. And they also feature amenity space, which for flats, again in an urban location, is increasingly rare. So therefore, the proposals will provide a high standard of amenity for future occupants. Turning to the proposed elevations, the front elevation, which is probably most useful, is shown on the top left-hand side of your screen. The design itself is inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright's Roby House, and it also gives a nice nod to the historical nature of the building and its former sloping roof form. Now, as you can see, whilst the proposal indeed cautiously can be described as going up 2.5 stories, the residual relationship with the proposal, if we took away the basement level, what you will see is a 3-story building due to the fact that the applicant has utilized the roof space. And this design has evolved over multiple pre-application discussions between officers and the applicant and a withdrawn application previously, and from working to achieve this design. Finally, the applicant has prepared an AVR. Now, there's not creative license within this. This is an accurate visual representation of what you can see on the site. This is to scale, and this is what you would see from that principal nodal point. And again, this would still sit remarkably lower than the dwellings within the town centre, given their requisite height when compared to the proposal. In this respect, the proposal is compliant with not only the core strategy and the development plan as a whole, but also the Borough Design Guide and Wokingham Town Centre SPD, which encompasses the entirety of the site. As members are aware, members of the public may be aware, we are currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Our most recent housing land supply position, as of the 31st of March 2025, was 2.5 years, which is an improvement on the previous year of 1.7. However, this is still half of what we require. Hence why when Winfield sites come forward, such as the proposal, within highly sustainable locations, within areas that comply with the spatial strategy in full, subject to material considerations that may indicate otherwise, they will be acceptable. This leads me to the officer's recommendation to members of the committee tonight, which is to grant planning permission, subject to conditions and informatives listed within Appendix 1 of the committee report, subject to the heads of terms outlined within the recommendation section of the committee report, or alternatively, should the Section 106 agreement not be signed within a period of 6 months, or another period otherwise agreed between officers and the head of development management, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. May I now invite Mr. Burney to the stage? You've got 3 minutes. You can sit as well, but you can stand, and
Sorry.
you're also allowed to sit.
I'll stand. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here today as a local resident to oppose this planning application. The visual mass of this development is inappropriate. It is surrounded by 2-storey residential properties. Local residents are concerned that they will be overlooked, lose privacy and lose visible blue sky at their properties. The statement of community consultation in the application relates to a previous application made before the flats were constructed, which was subsequently withdrawn. There has been no community consultation for the current application, so residents of Ascot House have never been consulted. Some of these residents bought their properties specifically because they were top-floor flats. Despite Clara Homes installing a structural frame as part of the original conversion, which would facilitate this proposed upward extension to the building, at least one buyer of a top-floor flat was reassured by both the selling agent and the construction manager at the time of purchase, that no upward development was planned. That assurance influenced their decision to buy. The original plans showed a lift, which also influenced buying decisions, but this was removed before residents moved in. One neighbour had to sell her top-floor flat at a loss because there was no lift and the stairs were too difficult for them. These broken promises raised real doubts about the developer's reliability. The application contains no provision for social or affordable housing, save for the pitiful recommended contribution of £23,000. This sum is less than 10% of the value of just one of the proposed flats and is significantly lower than the typical Section 106 payments for similar developments in Wokingham. This means that the community bears the long-term cost. The applicant has given the reason that the provision of affordable housing is not financially viable. This is no justification. Surely the same argument could be made for any development. There are also fire safety concerns. A proposed dry riser appears to stop at the first floor and doesn't reach the new upper levels. A sprinkler system was installed in the original build due to excessive travel distances and a single escape route. Residents would like confirmation that the sprinkler system will be maintained and not disappear like the lift did, and to know if it will be extended to the new floors. Although the application meets guidelines with regard to parking, local residents will tell you that this isn't enough in the real world. Anyone who knows the area knows that the surrounding roads have a serious parking problem, with visitors to the area preferring to park there for free rather than pay for the multi-storey, leaving residents often unable to park even in their allocated spaces. This will only be made worse by the addition of extra properties to Ascot House. We would politely request this application be refused.
Thank you, Mr. Burney. Thank you also for staying in time. Perfect. Great. Can I now invite Gardner Hansen for the, sorry, Mr. Hansen, on behalf of the applicant.
Yes.
You also have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak on behalf and in support of the application. My name is Gardner Hanson. I'm representing the applicants, Claire Ascot Limited. I'm the planning agent for the application. So the application before you this evening is the culmination of several years of design work and extensive engagement with your officers. The end result being a proposal we were very proud to put forward to members alongside a positive recommendation. As set out within your officer's comprehensive report, our proposed development is considered to be in strong compliance with both national and local policy and includes a number of significant planning benefits, most importantly, much-needed housing and town centre regeneration benefits. Given we're quite aware of various local and existing residents' concerns, I want to provide some additional commentary to members related to some of those concerns, in particular, construction and parking management. The main construction works are expected to last for 9 months, and a robust construction methodology and management plan has been submitted and will be secured via a planning condition. Additionally, a further condition is proposed that requires the applicant to implement a residents' consultation plan that includes the formation of a liaison group to ensure construction impacts and concerns are proactively managed throughout the build program. In terms of on-site construction impacts, the previous conversion of the building incorporated additional internal structural load-bearing columns to support a future upward extension, meaning outside of connecting the internal stair core, there will be no impacts internally within the existing building and development. Essentially, the extension is designed to be built in situ on top of the building and will be connected once completed above roof level. To further minimize impacts to existing residents, an external work lift scaffolding system will be utilized, which erects above roof level. Essentially, it sits as a canopy above roof level, and access for construction workers would be provided through a staircase column that connects onto the roof level. This means that there wouldn't be any external scaffolding system, which typically might include kind of mesh screening, which blocks residents' windows and views in daylight and sunlight. So there's been a proactive choice by the applicant to try and minimize as much as practically possible any construction-related impacts. Noting previous commentators' comments around parking stress, we are aware that this is a local concern. It was raised through our previous consultation on our previously withdrawn scheme. So we've worked quite intensively to try and find a solution, and we found a solution to ensure that all existing parking spaces will be retained throughout the construction and build program. And we've increased as Ben had referenced, we've increased the overall parking to 38 parking spaces, which means that there will be an overage of parking and an allocated space for each proposed unit and existing unit. This further limits any necessary potential overspill on local roads to try and mitigate any additional parking stress as required.
Ask you to stop here. No, I think you've done the 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you,
Great, thanks.
Mr. Hanson. Thank you very much. Who wants to go first? Oh, Caroline, sorry.
Thank you. Can you address the question about the consultation with the residents? The gentleman said there was one, but we didn't do a second one. Just want to know why. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. This relates to not consultation during the planning application process. That's a statutory requirement. And in fact, we actually had 2 of those as a part of the application, where all the application plans, everything that's been submitted, it is fully visible to the public. As per my committee report, all these comments have been acknowledged. What I think the objections we're referencing is pre-engagement, which is indeed good practice, but it's not something that we can enforce. And alternatively, it's not a reason to object in our view. Thank you.
Carol, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm sure it's in the report somewhere, Ben, but I either forgotten it or whatever. But there was mention of the fire sort of guidelines, as it were, and I see that there's a comment with from the fire officer saying that additional information was provided. It's a bit frightening to think that the system isn't going to work over 1 story. Could you confirm that it is, please?
Absolutely, Councillor. So first of all, fire regulations are fire regulations. Whilst it's, again, good practice for planners to engage on these topics, building regs picks this up, and frankly, they will not permit the construction of an unsafe building. What the applicant has done successfully is provide us with details of an intended fire strategy, and that's more than sufficient for a planning application. This still, should everything go through tonight, there are still several stages and several hoops the applicant will need to jump through with relation to fire safety, but the high-level analysis which has been provided is more than sufficient and actually over-sufficient for us to determine the application tonight. Thank you.
Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was going to, I'm a bit confused about whether there's an extra fire escape from the new levels as well as the staircase inside. It's not clear to me.
Yes, so with reference to the submitted plans, an external staircase is proposed, which could serve that purpose. Yes, absolutely.
Mike.
This is increasing the density significantly from 96 dwellings per hectare to 136, but maybe my ignorance, but is there an upper limit to the proposed density?
Absolutely not. If material considerations indicate that a development or a site, it can take development, that is the upper limit, and that is an assessment that officers must, of course, partake in. Now, I think with reference to 19 to 21 Marketplace, which the members of the planning committee approved, I think several months ago, actually maybe almost up to a year ago now, that had density of 150 dwellings per hectare. It's incredibly standard for town centres. There's no upper limit. There is no lower limit. It's site by site, sir. Of course. Thank you.
Go ahead.
On page 37, you talk about proposing to seize the minimum 10% carbon saving reduction required by the local plan, achieving an aspirational 52%. I'm wondering, so 52% of what? Because you've already got an existing building, presumably it's not taking account of the existing building's CO2 emissions.
No, that's correct. So the policy requirement for major development is spread across two policies, which concern all things sustainability, from carbon savings to renewable introductions to water retention. So in this case, the 10%, which is the policy requirement, applies to the 10 apartments. And the same rule applies for the aspirational strategy as well, sir.
I have a question for Ben then. One of it's about the overlooking part. I know we did the site visit, but maybe you can just refresh our memory about the challenges for the overlooking.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair. I think it's important just to first outline what the Borough Design Guide specifically states with relation to urban development, and to have a helpful note here. Schemes in more urban settings, which the application site is, or with a more intimate character, again, which the site is, will often require a tighter, more compact layout. Now, we have strict guidelines within the Borough Design Guide with respect to separation distances. And officers on this occasion, we have applied the longest ones possible throughout the report. Now, again, I think I mentioned this on the site visit, an officer could have said this relates to more of a front-to-front relationship, in which case there are no objections whatsoever, there are no shortfalls whatsoever. We've taken a cautious approach in assessing back-to-back separation distances for the proposed height of the building. And that is why some shortfalls are visible. But these shortfalls are not such where one of two things happens. One being there is a material harm which is above perceived, which again is a material consideration. And two, that the shortfalls are so limited that given the site was within an urban location, it can't not be expected, particularly in Wokingham Town Centre, the heart of the borough. Thank you.
Sam, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So following on from those comments, really the shortfall, I think it's good for the committee to kind of consider that, you know, for Kendrick roadway, so Kendrick Close sort of is as little as a 10-metre separation, isn't it, versus 30 metres, which is what we normally recommended. And for Norton Road, I think it's as little as 2 to 3 metres. So there's not a lot of
No, completely agree. The relationship with Kendrick Close, we'll start with that, is incredibly unique, given they were permitted at the same time under the same application. Again, this is why I think I mentioned in the previous little comment that there are one of two options and angles that officers can take with this, and the key one with Kendrick Close is real life harm. Now, the proposals have been recessed by almost 5 meters across the existing roof slope. They've learned from the mistakes of the 86 approval, which has been implemented. They've introduced privacy screens. So in terms of actual harm and actual overlooking, it's incredibly limited. And in fact, near impossible. I did a calculation earlier. You'd have to be 7'4" for your 45-degree arco outlook, leaning over the privacy balustrades to have views into the Kendrick Close Gardens, which again may happen, but incredibly rare, I'm sure. So yes, and turning to Norton Road next. Again, privacy screens are brought back. The elevations, of course, are assessed. Again, a facade is created, which in combination, again, limits any realistic harm given a human standard arc of outlook. It's just scientific as I can get, I'm afraid. But there are no overlooking concerns in that respect.
Moses, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Ben, I raised the issue about a lift when we had a site visit on Friday. So please give me some time. I'm not coming from building regs, but I want to read some stuff here. This is Building Regulations Part M. The requirement for providing a lift is mainly driven by the need to ensure accessibility for all residents, particularly those with limited mobility, in compliance with the spirit of the Equality Act 2010. For managed housing, which includes blocks of flats or apartments, the guidance in approved document M strongly advises or effectively mandates a lift for buildings of 2 stories or more to ensure the accommodation is suitable for all occupants. For larger developments, such as those with 30 or more individual flats above the ground floor, it is strongly recommended that 2 lifts be provided to ensure continued access if one is out of service for maintenance or breakdown. So I'm coming to the planning. Page 67, 11.2. It says that it is proposed that the 10 numbered dwellings proposed would not be built to accessible standards. While this does form a technical breach of CP2 and CP5 of the core strategy when assessing development as a whole, a policy compliant over provision of accessible dwellings is noted. Are you suggesting that we should approve planning for a development that does not comply with Equality Act 2010?
Thank you, Councillor. That's a very, very good question. I'd ask you to broaden your horizons in your consideration as to what is a holistic development. So the development as a whole, it amounts far more than 10 residential apartments. The development we're looking at today is for an upward extension. This is not a brand new building. This is an extension to existing apartments. Now, if you were to consider the ground floor apartments, which would meet accessibility standards as per building regulations, the building is in excess of the minimum requirements. Now, good practice aside, as viability has been raised, that certainly is a material consideration. But if there wasn't accessible dwellings in the dwelling within the overall building, yes, there would indeed be concerns. But on this occasion, we need to consider the building holistically, that the extension does not constitute a building, and therefore, whilst there is a technical breach, this would not warrant refusal of planning permission, nor stand contrary to the Public Sector Quality Duty Act. Thank you.
So what you're suggesting is, if somebody that needs mobility wants to occupy the higher stories, because you provided 20 that don't need lifts, they should be excluded from going to the top floor?
My job, Councillor, is to assess the application against our policies and consider things like a holistic size of a development. My job is not to inform the applicant of how to design their scheme, and nor is it a councillor's role. The role of officers on this occasion is to consider the overall accessibility of said building. And if the applicant wishes to exclude a demographic from sale, then that is at their discretion, so long as they comply with the accessibility standards overall. And for the same purpose, if we had a development of 2.5 stories and it was not built to perfect accessibility standards, or a lift was introduced, let's say, we would not object to that as a local planning authority.
So you don't agree with the Equality Act 2010 that says ensure accessibility for all residents?
I absolutely agree, councillor. This needs to be taken, again, holistically as a whole. We are considering an extension to a house. I'll pose an example for you. If we have a building which is 2 stories, we'd like to raise the roof by 1 story. And would we refuse the application for that because it doesn't have a lift? We wouldn't. It's a pragmatic approach to secure policy compliance over a whole development, not an extension. That's not what I'm implying at all.
And I'm getting confused. So because this is an existing development, we could raise it to 10 floors and not bother putting a lift in place. So if it's not, if we can't put a lift, shouldn't we stop extending beyond the limit that's allowable?
If in proportion of the whole development, councillor, that then shifts the percentage of accessible apartments, yes. But that's not the case here.
Yeah, good evening, committee. There's a number of you've kind of we've raised a number of different aspects that fall outside of the planning system here. Obviously, we've got the application in front of us, talked about building regs, talked about the Equalities Act. There are a number of different things that intersect each other, and I think what we need to do is, as Ben has identified, the proposal is for 10 units on the top of an existing building, not for a new building. And obviously a new building comes with its own requirements, accessibility requirements. In this case, the top floor is not a new building on its own, accessed independently from the other 2 floors. So therefore, when we're assessing accessibility, we're not necessarily just looking at the top floor that's being proposed here. The building has step-free access to all ground floor units. We can't ignore that. And so obviously what we have here, irrespective of building regs, which any scheme may comply with or may fail, we're not to know, the exact location of certain plug sockets and so on within a development. Likewise, there's certain things that we are not necessarily in a position to comment on here and now. But in terms of the development, officers are presenting you with a position that for the additional 10 units on top of this building, a separate lift or step-free access to those units is not required. And that's as far as we can go.
I think because I cited building regs, let me read what the NPPF says. The national planning policy, like in England, requires the planning system to promote inclusive design, ensuring new developments create safe, accessible, and high-quality public space for buildings. So you seem to be saying that we should consider this as a new development. So we don't need a lift because it's a new development, even if it's sitting on an existing development that takes it above 2 stories. I'm struggling with that concept.
It is a new development, but the question that's not being qualified is what is the development? Okay, if the development is a 3, 4, 5-story building, that will come with different accessibility requirements. We're not talking about a 3, 4, 5-story building. We're talking about an additional floor on top of an existing building. That is the development. And for example, for an additional story to be put on a 1, 2, 3-story building, for there to be mandatory lift requirements or other requirements, it would likely make many such developments completely lost the word. Non-viable. Thank you very much, everyone. It would make it non-viable. So, as I say, the context is what is the development, not the standards that are applied to other developments. Because again, we're not talking about a 10-story building. We're talking about an additional story on top of the 2-story building.
Sorry, the point I was making is this building is moving from 2 stories to 3 stories, and there's a requirement for a lift. Even the resident has complained that there's poor accessibility even as it is now. We want to put 10 more flats on top, which will worsen the situation. You say something is a technical breach, but yet it's acceptable.
Can you repeat, are you saying it is a technical breach on what I? It is. Right, that's fine.
The report says, why this does form a technical breach of CP2 and CP5? Page 67.
Because if you take the development, again, not taken holistically, and you take 10 apartments, and you apply our standard 10 to 20% must be accessible, there is a breach. It's black and white. But considering the development as a whole, the building as a whole, there is not. But again, rather than saying this, we acknowledge that applying the black and white, which is 10 to 20%, there would be a technical breach if that was the way you interpreted it. There's nothing more I can add to that, I'm afraid.
Are you clarified on that one? Yep, Wayne.
Can I, well, Moses ponders his next angle. Can I just look at the points? I mean, I have sympathy for the person who spoke, because quite clearly there's a lot of things that have been spoken this evening that we have no control over. You know, when somebody buys a flat thinking they're going to get a lift and they don't get it, et cetera, you know, that's down to the professionalism of the people selling the stuff. I mean, that's not for us. And the point around the seal provision or the provision for affordable housing, that's been around this committee, and I've been banging on about that for ages. But unfortunately, you go open book, and there's nothing we can do about that. We don't like it, but we are where we are. And I agree with you 100% on that. But I want to come back to the separations, and taking on your point, Ben, if we were looking at this as a new development today, not the 86 development when it was approved, because quite clearly there was an interesting separation on that point, which today may not get through. Some of these separations are not compliant. So I think for us this evening, it's how we define harm. And do we consider that harm great enough to refuse this application based on the overlooking? Now, I take on board what you say about the BRE angle coming out the back, et cetera, but, you know, some of these separation gaps, especially in Kendrick Close, are they're a third of where they should be, aren't they? And I mean, it is quite stark. Even if you look at it on Google Maps, it's very, very stark. So I suppose for us this evening it's the harm of going up again, sloping down, and at the front. I mean, the front, I don't see a major issue with, personally, because you are in a major development area. You're overlooking the new hotel that was built some years ago. It's that back section for me where there's obviously going to be harm. But it's what degree of harm and whether that constitutes a refusal at this planning committee.
Just my understanding, I mean, there is already harm in a way. The issue is not a new issue because it's already there. So the challenge is, will an additional floor cause additional harm, notwithstanding that currently the overlooking is already not something we would have approved maybe if it was a brand new development. But that's already an existing, yeah, okay, yes, thanks, sorry, I misunderstood.
Well, I was just going to say, are we actually making that harm any worse? Because if you look at the way they've done the side that faces Kendrick Close, it's not all the way to the existing vertical wall. It's quite a long way back. So is it actually making it any worse than it is now? Is how I am thinking about it.
go to Sam first. Sam?
Yeah, and I think sort of, some of the points today, we were discussing it, look, if it had been a brand new development, and there was just a plot of land there, would we be putting it through? The answer is no, right? It'd be overbearing. And I think the question, for ourselves, and what I've been thinking about this evening is would further development of this, cause it to be more overbearing? In my opinion, I think yes. That doesn't mean and maybe this is one for you guys, I think, actually, if you look at some of the building would, I think, appear overly dominant and out of keeping, of the area. It's already overbearing. It's already, the sort of issues with the closeness to the residential roads next to it. And I think, in my opinion, this would be conflicting with, core strategy CP1 and CP3. And also, we talk about with the borough design guide as well, which I think this conflicts with. So, yeah, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so I think the key here is assessing that degree of harm. And in the officer's report, it is acknowledged that there will be limited harm. But the design of the proposal, the way that the roof form fits around the building has been sloped and set back as such, where unless you were stood at the end of Kendrick Close, you would not be able to see it laterally. Your VSC, which is the very comprehensive daylight sunlight test, which the applicants carried out, it shows that the VSC, the visual sky component, vertical sky component, wouldn't change. That's the key test there. So whilst what we see here is a building that is taller, and it is indeed taller, methodically we worked through how this harm could be perceived through visuals, through additional overshadowing assessments, which again inform overbearing as well. So whilst again we could take a very literal approach to say yes, this is a taller building, is likely to be overbearing, considering the facts of the case, the real life harm would be limited at most in officer's view, and there is again the evidence there to support that assertion.
Mike?
Well, I'm just going to draw attention to the drawing on page 117 of our agenda, which shows this overlooking aspect. And in particular, I was going to ask, it shows a privacy screen of a particular height. You did mention what the height was, I forget what it was. How strongly can it be insisted that that is installed? Because that seems to be the key to stopping the overlooking.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So that's been secured by planning condition, and therefore is a prerequisite of the planning permission to install those. An installation has been conditioned to happen prior to anybody even occupying the units and retained for the lifetime of the development, sir.
So admission of that screen would prevent them having a completion certificate, would it?
It would put them in breach of planning condition, sir. Now, planning conditions are applied to developments that would not be acceptable unless you apply them. This is a necessary prerequisite of planning permission. So yes, if they installed or they did not install the privacy screens, that would be a breach of condition, and then the expediency of enforcement action would be considered. So yes, it's an absolute necessity for the scheme going forward.
Any further questions at this stage? Oh, Mike?
Yes, sorry, we briefly mentioned it a minute or two ago. The resident who spoke in opposition raised an issue over what, in their opinion, was the relatively small amount of money for the affordable homes omission. Could you enlarge a little bit about maybe how that figure is arrived at?
Yes, thank you, sir. So the viability figure came out through, I think it was around 8 months of negotiation with a third-party consultant, which was appointed by the council to review essentially the developer's books. Now, this was a protracted period, given there were many back and forths and initially many disagreed outputs. We've seen this a fair few small sites. Simply, brownfield land is more expensive to develop than greenfield land. Is a point in fact that this committee has seen time and time again. It's an unfortunate truth. Now, in this case, the applicant is proposing to develop the airspace, which is relatively novel for Wokingham. It certainly is. And even the construction method statement that the applicant's representative clarified at the start of this meeting it's extremely expensive to construct in a way which is at least half sensitive to residents. And that in combination with the fact that this is a town centre location, unfortunately, does indeed tip the scales on a small development where a modest proportion is, in fact, we're lucky to have, unfortunately, given the position for the market for small to medium enterprises at the moment. So I absolutely agree. It's a frustrating point of our industry, but it's very factual and it's been evidence-based in accordance with the planning practice guidance and the MPPF. So everything has been done by the book, sir.
And you said this consultant is an independent of either the developer or the council? Thank you.
Any further questions for the committee? Moses, Wayne, anything, you guys? You would like me to make a summary, or are you guys?
I wanted to ask Ben to explain on page 63, clause 10.18, what it means by limited levels of harm have been demonstrated to existing apartment at Ascot House, and how they plan to mitigate the limited levels of harm.
Sorry, Councillor, did you say paragraph 10.8? Sorry. 10.18. One moment, please. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Councillor. So limited levels of harm have been evidenced to occur by virtue of loss of VSC of 2 windows, and the I think I've got my notes here. Please bear with me, Councillor. Don't want to paraphrase this. The sunlight to windows. So there's 3 windows out of the whole development which have minor shortfalls in BRE best practice guidance. So 2 of these are for VSC, but as explained in the report, these are either windows that serve dual purpose or surrounded by vegetation, which limits light as existing. And again, this has been very cautious saying that there is harm here, because a logical approach would say that there is none. But what's been reported in the officer's report is what is within the daylight survey, which doesn't account for vegetation. So there is limited technical harm, but in reality, that is so limited that that it would not tilt the planning balance in any type of way, unfortunately.
So happy to entertain more questions. But just so the officer has made a balance decision, obviously. The site is within a settlement location in a major development, Wokingham Town Centre. It's in a nodal location. We currently cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, so we have the tilted balance is engaged. This is forces us to have a presumption in favor of sustainable development. We do also know that the MPPF gives substantial weight to using suitable former brownfield land. The proposal optimizes density in an urban town center location with good public transport accessibility. It makes efficient use of the airspace above an existing residential building. There are no objections from highways. Parking, it meets the standards, although I understand there are other concerns. Drainage, there are no issues. And then what sort of weighs against those positive ones, which including 10 new units, are the potential overlooking. The officer has given the limited weight, it is already overlooking. And then the question is how much additional harm will be done by an extra floor. And my understanding is that there have been efforts made to mitigate that harm by having that sort of tilted roof and a further away. And also, you know, the other issue was raised by the officer is accessibility. So there's no lift, so the accessibility for these 10 new units will be pretty much non-existing for people who have challenges. But if you look at it, overall site, it has accessibility already in the existing ground floor, and that is what the officer has based on. Yeah, so that's a bit the balance, I think, Brian.
Could I just jump in on the lift question, because I know that was left slightly untied at the end there. Just before members go into any vote, I've just been just researching this to make sure I was comfortable with our position, and it's important to say that whilst accessibility on any scheme is an important consideration, there is no planning policy requirement within our local plan for a lift for this scale of development in planning terms. The building, obviously, as Martine, as you've just mentioned, it provides ground floor units with step-free access already, and that meets the relevant accessibility standards under building regs, which assess the building as a whole, not us cherry picking a requirement from building regs and applying it to just part of the building. Then that building regs, as with all schemes and other schemes approved within our borough and adjoining boroughs at 3-4 stories that do not have a lift core, they will all be considered at a building control stage. So there is no difference here. Obviously, we're not proposing a 3-story building. That's the result. But the proposal is for an additional floor on top. And obviously, building regs makes a distinction in Part M. Thanks.
Thanks. So, yeah, Moses, go ahead.
So, Brian, are you suggesting that if this planning approval goes ahead, building regs could still impose the requirement for a lift? I thought building regs is all about the technical details of the lift, and planning is about meeting the accessibility requirements.
The planning system is about ensuring that accessibility is built into a scheme. It is not about meeting building regs. I'm not suggesting that anything should happen at building regs, because it's not my place nor the planning committee's place to be commenting on the building reg requirements for the development.
Sorry, Chair. Well, you said it's not a requirement in our local plan. Shouldn't the local plan be subservient to the national planning policy framework?
Just to clarify, the local plan has no requirement for a lift specified for this size of building. The national planning policy framework has overarching aspirations to ensure development is accessible. It does not prescribe building regulation standards for step-free access for a third floor being added onto a second floor.
Carol, you mentioned something about the Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service, because they gave advice. I can't find that advice in here. What advice did they give? So they would obviously, if they were consulted, they would be taking into account anything to do with accessibility, lifts, fire envelope. What was the advice? Do we know what they said? Because I'm straying a bit here, but considering what the gentleman said about, and it's only what the gentleman said about the reputation of the builder and things which are agreed, and people bought flats and then they didn't turn out to be X, Y, and Z, etc., etc. It would be interesting. I know it won't influence our decision this evening, but it will certainly give some comfort under building control, because building control would look at that advice on what the fire service gave as their envelope safety strategy.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify, the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service, they didn't recommend more, didn't request any additional information. Their role within this, it might well be a formatting error in the committee report, which may say this, but just to confirm exactly what they said, they outlined quite clearly, this is in line with B5 of ADB Volume 1, 2019, and they've set out additional local requirements under the Berkshire Act, and essentially linked all their advice directly to building regulations. Their commentary is generally quite limited on these applications, other than carry distance, addition of pumping appliances, etc., high reach appliances. They mentioned bridges in their advice, so it's quite general, I'm afraid. But no, they didn't request any additional information, Councillor.
It just says here, advice provided, which we don't see that too often, do we?
No, it's just that general advice.
Back, Martin, we're back to the killer question. Does the balance of harm outweigh, the approval?
Significantly outweigh the thing. And that is that's where we are at the moment, yeah. So you have the positive parts, and then you have just those things significantly outweigh the things. Sorry.
Just qualify. Sorry, Chair. Just to qualify, the negatives of a scheme, the harm, that has to significantly outweigh the benefits, not vice versa. No, just to clarify.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
And in your opinion, that is not the case. Yeah. And then we have to make our own case. Do we need any?
I think question before we come to a conclusion on that. The construction design phase programme for this, considering again, I'm listening to what's happened before and how they're going to do this, described by the applicant, i.e. they're not putting scaffolding, they're not meshing the building, etc., etc., etc. So this is quite something different to lessen the inconvenience to the existing flat owners. That will come back through the normal channels and be signed off by you if it was approved this evening, or by building control in conjunction with you, or if they go outside, it will be an independent building control person. The construction phase plan.
So that's approved at high level as a part of this application. Right. But again, much like to the privacy balustrades, we have the monitoring teams and construction teams who will be on site, making sure those high level principles are acceptable are adhered to.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to propose to go for the vote. We have a proposal by the planner officer based on the balance, where we have, the location is no challenging. We are obviously in a presumption of favorable of sustainable development. We do know that the NPPF gives a substantial weight to housing in the previous brownfield, and then you have the negative parts that are maybe the overlooking and the accessibility. And then is that causing those two issues, causing significant harm compared to the positive parts? And I would like to see, does anybody wants to make a recommendation for support of the proposal made by the officer?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we're in the usual place of being between a rock and a hard place, because we're limited with our housing supply, etc. But overall, I think it's not significant, the change that's going to be made, and just in short, I would propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Do we have a seconder for that one? Catherine? Six, 4, and anyone's against? And 2 against. Any abstaining? Did I miss anything? No. Okay. Thank you. Then we'll move to the next item, which is early. And then Moses and Mike and Catherine will go. Are you coming back? Would you like me? No. No. Okay, then I'm not looking for you guys. Yeah, Moses, you're not okay. You're not planning to come back, eh? No. Okay, thank you. You're more welcome to come back, but yeah, I don't think there's anything to come back for. Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is everybody ready for the second part? We're moving now to item 32, which is application number 25216, which is 75 Chiltern Crescent. We'll start with a presentation by Tarek.
Be 1 second, Chair.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. This application will relate to household application at 75 Children Crescent, Early Wokenham, and development is sought for the following works as summarised: hip to gable roof enlargement with a rear dormer extension, as first floor side extension, the erection of a part single, part 2-storey rear extension, a single-storey front porch extension, and associated alterations to fenestration. Here is an aerial image and block plan of the application site. Concerns on character grounds have been raised regarding the proposed hip to gable roof enlargement and first floor side extension. As per the extract taken from section 4 of the Borough Design Guide, such alterations to pairs of semi-detached houses are considered to be unacceptable. However, the overriding consideration in any case is the context of the local character and the impact on the street scene. Chiltern Crescent has evolved over time with varying alterations and extensions. The adjoining neighbouring house has a gable roof form. Just further along the road is another example of the gable roof form with a first floor side extension and rear dormer extension, which is similar to that proposed. We also have another example of a gable roof form. There's also varying roof forms within the surround further along the street scene. We have a flat roof form, a mono-pitched roof form that forms a cat slide. All of this goes to show that there is a degree of variation within the roof form. These roof forms do not match the original dwelling. And as such, given the clear degree of variation within the roof form, the scheme would not appear out of place. It would not cause harm to the character of the area. It would not draw the eye, and it would not appear visually incongruous within the street scene. Overall, subject to conditions attached to this application, the proposed development would not adversely impact the character of the area or neighbouring amenity. Adequate on-site parking provision has been provided, and landscape enhancements in the form of a boundary hedgerow will be conditioned in the interests of maintaining the visual amenity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tarek. Can I now invite Stephen Newton to come to speak? Oh, you will tip.
Don't argue.
I have Stephen first. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I do appreciate the efforts of the officer to try and improve this application to make it more acceptable. To that end, I have withdrawn my objection regarding loss of soft landscaping in view of the officer's proposed condition. I'm also willing to withdraw my objection on the loss of light conditional on revised drawings being provided and agreed by the officer that adequately addresses the restricted light issue. Now, as you know, Wokingham Borough has a borough design guide, which is supplemental to the Wokingham Borough Core Spatial Strategy. And you are the custodians of these documents and are interpreted and how they are applied within the borough. The design guide mentions the need for good design, attractive and harmonious places, ensuring that all developments improve the character and quality of the area. Development should respect and be sympathetic to the character of an area. They should minimise overlooking, loss of privacy or over-dominance. And when reviewing applications, full account should be taken of the mass and height in relation to adjacent development and surrounding spaces. Not my words, the words of the guide and the policy. In my opinion, conflating permitted development that has allowed lower standards to be introduced and development that requires approval and is therefore subject to the principles of the strategy and design guide is highly detrimental and indeed undermines the importance of these documents. Just because something may be got away with under permitted development, it should not mean that this then becomes the benchmark and the borough strategy and design guide are simply ignored. This estate of approximately 500 houses was built to a consistent design which provided a consistent feel and a sense of community. It is perfectly possible to maintain this whilst allowing development, and there are numerous examples of this within the area already. Highlighting a few smaller scale exceptions that have been done under permitted development is not the appropriate way to consider this application, in my opinion. Now, specific to this application, I have two major concerns. Firstly, the roof. The change from a hip end to gable end should simply not be allowed. As referred to, page 57 of the Borough Design Guide states that this is unacceptable. And there are many other two-storey extensions of this nature in the area that have indeed followed this Borough Design Guide. Secondly, overlooking and loss of privacy. Traditionally, roof dormers were located in the middle of a sloping roof. When the window is moved to align with the back wall, this enables occupants to look down onto neighbouring patios, which is not possible when the window is set back from the edge, as is normally the case with a traditional position dormer. From a neighbour's perspective, edge-mounted windows appear intrusive and dominating. There is no setback from the rear wall shown on section AA of drawing ACC PL 401, and therefore presenting the loft conversion as a flat roof third floor as seen from the rear of the property. This loss of privacy impacts several immediate neighbouring properties, not just where it is back to back. I'm therefore respectfully asking the committee to apply the Borough Strategy and Borough Design Guide and reject this application as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And once more, apologies for you delaying your meeting. And I would like to invite Mr. Marsh. Tim, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to comment on a couple of things. First of all, overlooking paragraph 21 in the officer report claims that the rear dormers and windows would not introduce any new views. Well, that's just not credible. Here we have a view from a neighbour's garden on a typical dormer. The rear dormer window overlooking is obvious, plus it's an intrusive appearance. Now, the difference between that and this, what I'm showing you here, and what we've got is that we've actually got a large Juliet balcony on the back with a full-size French doors at the back instead of a small window. The difference is, of course, a window, standard window lets light in. The Juliet balcony just gives the occupants a panoramic view to the occupants, but it's allowed under permitted development. So to impact mitigation, it would be better set back. Unfortunately, PD requires it set back of only 200 millimetres, but as you can see from section AA on the drawings, it shows the wall of the dormer in line with the back wall and not set back. This does not appear to comply with the PD requirements. Moving on to hip end roof on two-storey side extensions, it's acknowledged by planning that Chiltern Crescent is primarily characterised by hip end properties, the style as built. There's masses of them there. If you look down, that's this one. If gable ends have crept in since PD, they are easy to spot because they stand out due to them being out of character and an incongruous form of development. Two-storey side extensions have been added to 40 properties in Chiltern Crescent, and they all have retained the sloping hip end roofs. There's a total of around 87 houses there. and half of them are down. So this is a two-ended, this is a two-storey extended property with hip end roof, which is typical of the 40 all the way around. To add a gable end roof to an extended property at number 75 would exaggerate an out of character and incongruous form of development. Furthermore, it would be the only extended gable end property in Chiltern Crescent. There are 87 houses in Chiltern Crescent, as I said, 40 with two-storey side extensions, none gable end. When two-storey side extensions are added to houses with loft conversions, it is perfectly possible to include sloping hip end roofs. The Borough Design Guide is quite explicit, as you've seen, concerning roof forms of hip end properties. When two-storey side extensions are added, it clearly shows that gable ends are unacceptable. In conclusion, this application should be refused as the gable end roof form would be out of character in the area, which is overwhelmingly hip end properties, and would therefore not comply with policy CP3, which requires development to be in an appropriate build form and specific guidance in
Can I ask you to stop?
Borough Design Guide.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Who wants to start on this one? Carol.
Thank you very much. I'm not a great fan of Juliet balconies, and I understand that the larger opening will obviously give more light, but I would just be interested in the officer's comment on how that was viewed, as to whether that would increase overlooking or, as it was saying, that it's acceptable.
Thank you, Carol. Just to start, I would like to start and emphasise that a degree of, or a mutual degree of overlooking between two adjoining properties is a common feature in any suburban environment with houses arranged in a linear format. It is not the purpose of planning policy or guidance to completely eliminate any visibility or intervisibility between houses. The purpose is to mitigate and prevent and reduce any unacceptable level of overlooking towards, say, a rear patio area, so sensitive private amenity areas. The rear dormer windows in this question would largely offer views towards the far rear garden of the adjoining houses. Now, there would be oblique views to the adjoining houses, but the oblique view is classed as a view where the onlooker or occupier would have to purposely stand in an angled way and purposely look into their neighbouring gardens, patio areas. It's the equivalent of sticking your head outside of a window and looking into your neighbouring garden area, effectively. It wouldn't offer a direct, constant, direct line of sight into the neighbouring houses. So just to answer the question in terms of the Juliet balcony, there's no walkout balcony. It's just a set of large doors. So there wouldn't be any material difference with respect to views into adjoining houses or houses to the rear of the application site in this instance. So there wouldn't be any unacceptable level of overlooking or loss of privacy to any neighbouring amenity areas.
Thank you. Yep. Any other questions? Catherine?
Well, I just wonder what the effect on the, if we were to allow this whole application, but with the condition that you had to go back to having a hipped roof, so you've got all the room. I mean, how much amenity do they lose by that room being hipped rather than gable end? So I assume it only affects one room inside.
So the dormer would have a bedroom, or would serve a bedroom effectively, and I propose that the applicant wishes to have additional headspace, but that's irrespective of the application. The key is that the hip to gable roof conversion would not adversely impact the character of the area in this instance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm in favour of keeping the hipped roof. I'm just thinking, would that room be viable as a room if it had that sloping ceiling?
I'm unable to comment on that. Of course, it's down to the applicant, but that isn't a material concern in this instance. There's more than adequate enough internal floor space for the homeowners.
I have a question. Is this area a conservation area?
No, it's not within a conservation area.
Did we have we ever tried to get it a conservation area, or is that never no attempts made?
Not to my knowledge, there hasn't been any formal designation or request to make it a conservation area.
The only thing is that, you know, I hear your issues with the cable, but I mean, if you visit a house next door to it, it's already a flat roof. To me personally, it might actually improve the view if you have both straight room, but I don't know what other people think of that one.
I think when Tarek showed those pictures, I mean, don't shoot me down, but got some horrific extensions, haven't you? You know, can you put that back up, Tarek? I mean, some of them are dreadful. And I know Mr. Marsh has been trying for years to do his best in this area. You know, I mean, the one at the top, middle, that fits the bill, doesn't it? But you won't get as much floor space. But then there were some others you had earlier. They're the best. But I mean, just going back to this, I'm going to come back to this word appeal. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the Juliet and what Mr. Marsh said, because, you know, if you were number 77, they wake up in the morning, you've got complete line of sight of their whole garden. But why I'm a little bit confused is none of these front extensions have been done under PD rights, have they?
As in the front porch
No, so
extensions?
if you take any extension here,
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of the work that's done at the back has been done under PD rights, permitted development, but none of the work at the front. For example, you take the bottom left, that wouldn't have been done under PD rights, would it? That would have been a full application.
That one looks like a canopy roof.
Oh.
To a bay window, so it could have been done under PD rights, Class A, subject to it meeting criteria.
But the majority of stuff, apart from, you know, if you take that as the other ones, you take the top one, the next one along, the next one along, that would have all been under planning applications, wouldn't they?
The top one's the one in the top row.
Yeah, if you take the ones that you show on there, most of those would have had a planning application.
Yeah, so I can confirm the one in the centre, number 57, was in fact done under a planning application and was sent to committee as well and eventually approved. So not all of these extensions are inherently under permitted development, to emphasise that.
I mean, there's no doubt, aesthetically pleasing. It looks far better. You step down, you step back, as long as you make it in keeping, because sometimes they do and it just doesn't look in keeping. But I don't. My problem here is, you know, only last month we had something not so dissimilar, but not quite the same in this area. If this went to appeal, it would get approved. I mean,
the other one was was more retrospective, which put a different flavour on it than.
Well, yeah,
than this
absolutely.
one. I know, but
I mean, you know, at the back, you know, I hate flat roofs, but each to their own. But you know, it's going to be. But I understand what you're saying. You know, if you're looking out, you're not looking down like that. But by looking out, they're still going to see their full sight of their neighbouring garden, aren't they? At number 77. But it then comes down to privacy. How much privacy do we take into account under this application?
Just to emphasise, the views would be elevated, so the same views would be comparable to being on the first floor level. essentially. So the views will just be more elevated towards the neighbouring amenity areas, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's harmful because the views are oblique, they're not, and they're angled, they're not direct head-on views that offer a constant line of sight to the neighbouring, say, patio areas.
Sam?
Yeah, and I think sort of based on, what we've heard today, I think, I agree with Wayne. I'm not personally sort of, the biggest fan of the style of this extension, but I think, looking at the street scene, I think, in the other houses, the number of homes on these roads that have sort of similar sort of work done to them. So I'd be minded to approve this based on it being in keeping with the area.
Thank you, Sam. Brian, did you want to add anything to it? Okay. Okay, then the proposal is, we don't have to go through the whole thing, but Sam, you're proposing to support the recommendation by the officer. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, Carol has a seconder. Could we have a vote? Anybody voting for this proposal? That is 5, that is unanimous. Thank you all. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, or after the meeting? Shall we close the meeting? Is it? I don't think there's anything else.
The only first date. Yeah, just to update councillors that the major appeal performance at the moment, we are now clear of hitting 10% because of recent appeal decisions. We have 2 appeals in the pipeline, which are unlikely to be determined in the next quarter. So it may be the quarter after that, and obviously by that point we would reassess and present to you latest figures. But even if those 2 were to come in now, which they won't, we won't hit 10, and then it should continue to drop. So from a kind of statistical, qualitative performance perspective, we are safe for the foreseeable future in terms of our major appeals record.